Thanks for inviting me to this conference and be a speaker. Lilia, Powell, and other great people in this room. I'm sure I'll miss a lot of people if I start reading the names. But it's been, I traveled from New York for 13, 14 hours or whatever, and just to attend to this conference and meet lots of interesting people who got great thoughts, great ideas, great technology topics that I can learn a lot from, and which I did over the last 10, 15 presentations that I sat through. So thanks again. And one more thank you before I start my presentation is thanks to Lilia and the team for putting this all together. The camera crew, light crew, the food, everything is super amazing. It's wonderful. Thank you again. So introduction. My name is Sriram Venkataraman. It's a long name, sorry. But I also go by Sri, the first three letters of my first name, S-R-I. Easier on the tongue, easier with everyone. And that's how, even back in the US, people call me Sri. And I've been in consulting for the last 18 years or so, primarily operating in investment banks, large financial institutions where trading happens for fixed income, equities, derivatives, OTC derivatives, and FX, of course. And a lot of my work revolved around front office, middle office, and back office. I'll come to my page at that time, but primarily a lot of those areas or functions have got a lot of potential or relevance to the blockchain topic or distributed ledger. The benefits of blockchain, all of that are very, very apparent in those cases. And that's a part that I want to focus on, primarily use cases in capital markets and trading in capital markets. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a few seconds. How do I do this? Yeah. So, back in the day, 2015 or even 2014, if I talk Bitcoin or blockchain, people will throw me out of the window because, it's a bad word, it's in the gray economy, bad people use it, but it's no longer so. Over the last 18 months or so, or over 2 years, it has evolved with a lot of conversation, not just by me, but lots of people, evangelists I call them, who've been articulating very well, better than I, the potential benefits of this technology or the features of the Bitcoin that has been adopted for blockchain. But still, there is a lot of ground to cover. Some people call it hype cycle. We are no longer in a hype cycle. It's more of a reality, meaning there are practical applications that can be done that are developed. Use cases have been very clearly articulated, very clearly documented, and regulators have kept abreast of the topic. They know the benefits. They know they have better control. Risk can be lowered, settlement risk can be reduced. All of those benefits, and of course cybersecurity, all of those benefits have been clearly articulated. And I'm not going to read through all of this dense text in the slide, but I'm going to use my presentation more just to point you in certain sections of the page, as opposed to just reading. You are all smart people here, you can read that very well. So one of the things that I would say, which is not on the page, is that every change management program, there is always in a large bank, there's a change the bank and run the bank, CTB and RTB. Every CTB team who are undertaking change management programs are now asked to explain in great detail how blockchain can be adopted to their CTB program. So I'll get into one example later in the deck, but without that examination, whether blockchain can be used to solve that CTB or change management program, it'll be harder to get funding. So if blockchain cannot be applicable, then this thing will not get funded. So that's one thing that we want to keep note of. So again, what are the key drivers? All these four bullets or 4 points, everybody is well aware. The one thing that I would say, which is not in the slide, is something called fear of missing out, or FOMO, FOMO. So it's all about a large bank, pick a name. They're all scared about losing their business model. They know a 2-person startup in Ukraine or in California is fundamentally altering their business model. So what does that mean for people like some of the big banks? Which means that if you look at the website of, let's say, JP Morgan, you would find it's hard to get information on alternative lending. Now, JP Morgan does it a lot, but the thing is it's hard to get that information from their website. But the unbundling of that bank is already happening by a startup who's developing tools for, let's say, lending. And that is what is happening in the US and all over the world. But if you look at it, technology adoption, that is actually is happening all over the world, right? This is a slide, or the picture is from HBR, Harvard Business Review, and you can see, telephone, the penetration happened in 50 years or whatever, but internet happened in 5 years, 10 years. And that gives a lot of opportunities for startups. The barriers to entry is coming down, and what does that mean for financial services? So the adoption rates in financial services is kind of slow, not because they don't want to do it, but because of legacy technology that has been there for a long time. Mergers have happened over the last 30 years. Banks are still using same systems that are run by COBOL or mainframe, and some of the people who are supporting those systems are getting out of the workforce because of age, because of life events, and people can no longer support the systems. And if you look at the middle bullet, or settlements, they are on a T+3 timeline, at least in the US, and they are moving to T+2 in September 2017. And if that program started now, there will always be a question about, okay, can blockchain do this faster, cheaper, and more efficient? And the answer is yes. A lot of these systems are not really ready for real-time processing. They are more on batch processing, and that also gives opportunity for a lot of investments in big data, real-time systems, encryption, et cetera, et cetera. And the last point is customer base. They are also evolving or changing. They are no longer my traditional customers. They are millennials who expect different behaviors or different expectations from the bank. And think about it, if Google starts a bank tomorrow, a lot of the millennials will jump to Google as opposed to banking with Barclays or JP Morgan. So that's something that we need to think about too. So this is my world. I mean, there are a lot of text in this, but I operate in trading and capital markets for the last 18 years. So that involves front office, middle office, and back office, which is ops and tech. So everything about trading for fixed income, equities, derivatives, OTC, FX, commodities, and that's all undertaken by technology, process, and of course people. And every bullet underneath of these big boxes, I got potential for blockchain. And I'm pretty sure I missed a lot of bullets, which are outside of the front office for sales and trading. Everywhere, let's say KYC, client onboarding, whatever, there is potential for use of blockchain. Sorry. So that's where it is. I'll talk about the use cases in a second, but if you take any of that wherein there is a bilateral settlement or two banks interacting with each other to settle or clear a transaction, there is legacy technology. There is 40, 50-year-old systems that are still operating today using, let's say, COBOL mainframe or whatever. So what are the use cases, right? It could be security issuance. That means equity trading, fixed income bond platform like Roman was talking about that. It could be trade finance. That is, again, not changed much over the last 40 years. It's based on letters of credit or working capital finance. Everything about clearing and settlement. I'll dive into clearing and settlement in the next page. And also asset servicing, which is more like, think about it. If you are a custodian or a CSD, if you get, let's say, a dividend from IBM, that dividend needs to be distributed to all the holdings or the accounts that you have for your clients. And also reference data and reconciliation. So all of that are prime topics for blockchain adoption. And some of you may wonder, where is payments in this? Payments is kind of embedded in a lot of these topics, including asset servicing. And that's where some of the technology that is developed for payments can be utilized here. So clearing and settlement, right? So if you think about it, blockchain, all the features like smart contracts, like digital tracking of asset, all of that can be used for clearing and settlement. It's primarily if I buy or sell, let's say $100 million of stock, that needs to be cleared. That means I need to deliver the stock and get cash if I'm selling, or vice versa if I'm buying. So blockchain technology for digital asset tracking, consensus-based methodologies, and of course the immutability of the ledger all plays a big part in clearing and settlement use case. It's clear? Thank you. That's me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
market entrance, and where should the peers that are working towards those blockchain solutions start from? And is it like Eastern markets, Western markets, how hard it is, and what will be the first kind of rotational thing that will get blockchain enablers and cause like whole processes to be?
Yeah, that's a good question, Lasha. Thanks for asking that. But if you really look at it, the Western markets, they have a lot of legacy processes, people, technology, and of course data. Data is dispersed right all over,
including geographies and locations. They will do it eventually. Eventually is that 5 years, 10 years now? Eventually will be very soon, right? But they are having a hard time to keep the legacy business running because that's what paying everybody's salary and bills. That keeps running. At the same time, I need to change my technology because a startup 2-person firm is already changing my business model without me knowing. So if you go to any new website like lendingtree.com, it's much easier, much more intuitive for you to navigate through as opposed to jpmorganchase.com or chase.com, right? And that is hobbling their efforts, the legacy piece that is dragging their feet. But an emerging country like Ukraine, where you don't have too much of baggage, just like the mobile phones, right? The mobile phone revolution caught up with the emerging market much faster, much cheaper than advanced countries because the advanced countries had to deal with copper wires. That was laid 100 years ago. So that could be one, where we already have some traction in some of the emerging markets, and we pick it up and use that technology or solution or toolkit or something that has been developed and use it in a large bank.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other questions that we may discuss here? Perfect. Thank you.
National Voice of Ukraine. I want to ask you, do you see a value of applying this new nice technological parts of infrastructure, where, let's say, CSD or one custodian, two custodians would switch to a blockchain, but the rest of the infrastructure will stay on the, as you call it, legacy systems?
Well, I think, if the rest of your constituents or people that, who are working with you, or bank who are working with you, are not really there with you in the journey, then you kind of lose the network effect. Because what's the point in me being more efficient, where I can settle trades in 2 days or less than 2 hours, when my main CSD cannot do it in 2 days? There's no point, right? So you lose that network ability, more network effects. So that could be one. So we got to have a consortium of partners who can run with you at the same pace that you are running. Did I answer your question?
You did, but I don't believe that.
Okay.
But thanks anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yes, we are ready to take one more. Sure.
Based on the people that you're talking to, I know you talked about emerging markets being more likely to come on board than established markets quickly. Are there any markets that you're seeing where things are actually moving along fairly quickly that you think are going to be some of those early adopter first markets? Because the stories you hear about are like ASX and CME and people like that who are in very established markets, but may take a while to get there, right? So what if you were advising startups on what markets they may want to look at or focus on around trading systems and where they should be thinking,
Right.
Where would that be?
Well, I think there's no one silver bullet answer to that, Justin. But it could be. It also depends on the problem statement. That like for instance, ASX, on Australia was pretty easy. Why? Because it was a different regime, and they didn't have the legacy obligations that countries like the US or UK had. So that was much more straightforward, and which is probably the reason why DH went there first. They didn't do the US economy or the US exchanges first. So that could be one. So it depends on, it's not just because I'm new or I'm emerging, I can do it quicker, faster. But if you think about a bond trading platform in a country like, let's say, Thailand, well, you can develop it, but you don't have the markets. So it goes two hands. Do you have a more deeper liquid markets? You don't have that. But then what's the point of developing the solution? So.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions that we have here? Okay, by this, let's close this particular presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.